Thank you for joining us. Before we start, I want everyone to take a slow, deep, and calming breath. And the key to that is really letting it out slowly. The point about this is that breath is the reason why we started NeVap and the reason why we are so focused on making mechanical ventilation safer. You see, at this point, everyone in the world has seen these images on the nightly news. And unfortunately, we continue to see these images. And most of us are now aware that intubation is very risky. In fact, every hospital in the world is actually trying to do their best to avoid intubating patients during this pandemic. And the reason is becoming more and more clear every day. We now know approximately 50% intubated COVID patients contract ventilator-associated pneumonia due to the design of the breathing tube. However, this isn't a new problem. It's really a scourge of modern medicine, and the problem is getting worse due to increased antibiotic resistance. Let me explain. Hospital-acquired pneumonia occurs in the emergency department, ICU, and the operating room because fluid containing pathogenic material continuously leaks along the outside of the breathing tube, pools in the subglottic space, and enters the lower airways. The mere presence of an endotracheal tube or a breathing tube increases the risk of pneumonia 600 to 2,000%, leads to increased mortality, morbidity, cost, and suffering. Not to mention, in addition, treatment costs for this condition are significantly high and growing because of increased antibiotic resistance. About 15 years ago, this was such a big problem that these large companies created a special class of breathing tube designed to basically drain and suction out this pathogenic material. But with only engineers at the helm, they designed devices that were quickly found to be defective in patients. These tubes use a single suction port right above the cuff, try and suction drain the pathogenic material before it has a chance to pool. The problem is when it's placed in a patient, due to the curve of the breathing tube, that port comes into direct contact with the airway tissue, and on average experiences total blockage after 4 to 6 minutes of operation. As a physician, I found this grossly inadequate, and that's the reason we created Inspire. This is the only ET tube that uses a tissue spacer and 24 suction points pointed away from airway tissue. This is already FDA cleared and CE marked, and this picture is actually courtesy of one of our distributors, Sharn Anesthesia. Now, when you actually apply vacuum suction drainage with this device, the performance is unmistakable. We gave this device to a group of UCSF lung researchers to do a side-by-side comparison, comparing the gold standard, which are the left, very left and right 2 columns, and the NeVap tube, which is the far right columns here. So the left column is what we have been using for the last 15 years, and the very right column, right 2 columns are the NeVap tube. Now, I'd like to show you how much better it is with a little video. So I'll go ahead and play this little video. On the left of this video, you'll find your standard subglottic suction breathing tube, and on your right, you'll find the NeVap tube. And this is really exciting because we already know that subglottic suction is a good strategy for preventing infections in the ICU. But up until this point, there hasn't ever been an airway management device such as this that could actually be utilized in other settings. And as a consequence, what we've noticed is there is now a bigger push, both here in the United States and abroad, to figure out infection control strategies to reduce post-operative infections that are occurring in these patients. This is the result of a recent 2,576 patient study in cardiothoracic patients, which revealed that using subglottic suction in the post-operative setting resulted in a 600% decrease in the incidence of post-operative pneumonia in these patients. So, as you know, we are further along, but where exactly is NeVap? Well, NeVap has 3 issued patents, an additional 15 issued international patents around the world. This also includes a new endobronchial tube that will be commercialized in the coming months. But our flagship device is already FDA cleared, CE mark cleared, TFDA cleared, and we are also working with several distributors for Japan, Canada, Brazil, and Australia to register the devices in those countries. We've also won numerous awards for medical device development, business, and design. On top of that, we've sold our device into 5 different continents. And we've done this on a shoestring budget. At this point, we can make about 1,000 devices a day. And with a little further investment, we can boost that up to about 12,000 a day. We're specifically proud of our research partners, but we're also looking for other physicians to take up the mantle and try this device and find out the interesting benefits of our device. And over the course of the next couple of months, we are basically focused on commercializing and improving mechanical ventilation for patients all over the world. We are in multiple countries at this point, and we do have many new distribution partners that are helping to introduce the device into places where COVID-19 is making this type of care absolutely 100% necessary. At the same time, we are getting, every month it seems like we're signing up new partners that are introducing new ways of studying the device and bringing it further into commercialization. So I think it's a very exciting time for us at NeVap, because we know that this is bread and butter for physicians and modern medicine. And it's a place where even a small improvement in how we deliver care can have an enormous impact for patients all over the world. So if you haven't guessed it by now, NeVap actually stands for something. NeVap stands for Never Ventilator Associated Pneumonia. I know somebody got that. and although we are unlike any medical device startup you've likely encountered in the past, we would really love the opportunity to put a better breathing tube in your hands. We also need help elucidating the clinical and economic benefits of what we are doing. And we believe that together, we have an opportunity to really change and improve the way mechanical ventilation is delivered for millions of patients all over the world. So I thank you so much, and I'll take questions now.
Great. Benjamin, thank you so much for being here tonight and telling us all about your device. This really seems like a very elegant solution, and I'm sure a problem that is not uncommon in folks that are ventilated. So why hasn't anyone been working on this prior to now? Why are we just hearing about this, do you think?
Well, to be perfectly honest, most of our medical device industry is not set up to do this kind of innovation. It's actually quite hard to bring a very cost-effective, low-cost kind of innovation to market that needs to be scaled dramatically to reach profitability. Most medical device companies are set up to sell you a $2,000 catheter. They're not set up to sell you something that is $10 or $20 because that's not their model. And so it is not only that this is a difficult regulatory area to innovate in, but it's also a very hard place to manufacture and scale to get to profitability. We've successfully done that, both of those things.
Great. So we have some great questions from our audience tonight. Thank you for those of you that are in the audience asking these fantastic questions. There are a couple of questions about essentially more about your financials, specifically about your sales and distribution model, your cost of goods sold, your margins. Can you talk about that a little bit more at a high level?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't tell you exactly what the cost of goods are. That's some internal secret. What I can tell you is at the current market rate, we manufacture and sell our device direct for a margin between 85% and 90%, which is a pretty good place to be. When we go through a distributor, the margins drop to about 70%, 70 to 65%, which is still, not that bad. Is that vague enough?
Can you talk a little bit about, there was another question, at least about the cost difference between standard ET tubes and your product. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so standard ET tubes are a real commodity product. They sell for between $1 to $1.50. Our device is selling for the exact same price as the current suction breathing tubes out there. Although our device, unlike the other ones, is not stuck in the ICU, it can actually be used in the operating setting and also in the emergent intubation setting. So in and of itself, it delivers significantly higher value to both the clinician and the patient at a price that is very acceptable to existing pay structures, because hospitals already buy that predicate device and pay that price.
All right, so a couple of questions around clinical data. So first of all, you had mentioned that you have sold 25,000 devices, and there was a question about what time period has that been over?
To be perfectly honest, the vast majority of that was done in 2020.
Okay. And a follow-up question to that, again, that seems like you have quite a few devices or ET tubes that are out on the market. What kind of clinical data have you been able to generate from that?
We really haven't generated any clinical data up to this point. We sell the device by basically putting it into the hands of doctors right now, having them try it and compare it to the current devices that they're using. The first time that I saw the device pull 300 milliliters out of a patient, I was sold. And usually that's the case with our end users, is that if we can show you intraoperatively or in the ICU that we can pull out 50 or 100 or even 500 milliliters of a fluid you didn't know was there, that's a pretty good indication that this is a device that might be beneficial for the patients.
All right. A couple of additional questions here. Is there a version for nasal intubation? And then also a question around, what do you think the biggest barrier for adoption might be?
Unfortunately, we haven't explored the nasal intubation market right now. It's a market where subglottic suction isn't used at all at this point. We have introduced the device into places where ENTs would, ear, nose, and throat specialists would use it. But at the same time, we haven't found requests for a nasal version at this point. Not in appreciable numbers. And the biggest barrier for use and adoption of this device is basically press and experience with the device. Many of us have used and trained with regular breathing tubes most of our careers, and we believe that it is standard. And so we're basically a device that is improving that space, but we're relatively unknown. Most people have never seen or used one of our devices before, and we'd like to change that in the coming months and years.
All right, so one last question for you, Benjamin. So again, around a little bit more about your business model. When are you profitable? Are you looking for funding currently? At what valuation? And then what if you're looking for strategic partnerships or potentially becoming an acquisition target, what's your exit strategy?
To be perfectly honest, we'll be profitable later. We'll break even this year. We'll probably be profitable later on in Q4 of this year. We would like to be bigger during this time. We do recognize there's a pandemic, and due to the rates of ventilator-associated pneumonia and the associated mortality in COVID patients, we would really like to be a lot bigger for the benefit of society and patients out there. We're really focused not on an acquisition in the near term. We're really focused on growing the portfolio of best-in-class airway management and airway support products. We believe that there are a lot of companies out there that when they can't sell some of their other things, such as ventilators, they may go and start to look for little acquisition targets with high margins and good product portfolios to bring on, either in partnership or acquisition. We'd really like NeVap to be bigger before we start to look for an acquisition target.
All right. Well, Benjamin, thank you again for being here tonight, and thank you for telling us all about NeVap.